Drama.
Hi.
You were right. It is 5:30.
Yeah, no, I know now. I shouldn't have listened to you.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's probably wise.
It's fine.
But it saves me sending you a text. I can congratulate you on your official
Thank you. Yeah.
certified. Huh?
It's all changed tomorrow. My life changes.
Oh, yeah, exactly. There.
Where are you at?
Sylvia's house.
Okay.
Yeah, her cat will probably come in here screaming in a little bit.
Okay. So it's going to rain tomorrow, I see.
Yeah. That's one reason why I left the bike in the shed.
Yeah.
If I'm having problems with it, I don't want to be having problems with it in the rain. I'd much rather just slog along in the, with a parka on than deal with
umbrella a must, it says.
What's that?
An umbrella a must.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like in the morning.
Yeah. Which is, yeah, most of my walks, but that's okay. I've had such great weather, I can't really complain.
That's been amazing, hasn't it?
Yeah, it really has. Yesterday, from up in Buena Vista Park, you could see the Farallon Islands.
Yeah.
Which, we get to see those maybe half a dozen times a year.
How far are they off?
25 miles.
Do people live on them?
No.
Oh.
No, it's just seagulls, seals.
Mm-hmm.
That's about it. Lots of sharks out on the waters, though. They like to eat the seals.
Yeah.
Yeah, seals are good snacks for big sharks.
Bless them.
Yeah, well, they all got to eat.
Yeah, everyone's got to eat. All right, I'm going to finish a couple of things while we're waiting.
Yeah,
there's no 20 minutes yet.
I'm going to make a cup of tea.
Okay. Well,
I'll
see
make
you later.
the next one for you as well.
Actually, I'm going to top mine up, I think. Good
Yeah.
idea.
All right, Nate. Sorry about getting the timing wrong, but at least we're not late.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Are
Kelly?
you able, are you able to hear me?
Yes, very well.
Okay, perfect. Good evening. How are you?
Good.
Good.
It
Good.
looks like it must have gotten colder where you are.
Yes, today it's been raining all day and it's so windy. So it's really, really cold out. And I actually believe in staying in when it's like that, but I had to pick up my children, which meant standing outside for almost an hour in the rain. So I felt
Ooh.
cold, which is why I still mad on.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Well, we're having a cold spell in San Francisco.
Mm,
Cold in San Francisco is not like the same as it is on the East Coast.
yeah. They're saying that tonight there's going to be like 50-mile-per-hour wind gusts, like in New
Oh,
York City.
wow.
It's
Okay.
really cold.
We don't have anything like that.
Yeah. I was in Minnesota and it was super cold. And ever since I got back here to New Jersey, it's been cold.
Hmm. Yeah.
Anyway,
Hmm.
do we have a expected number of people? Did you want to give folks a few minutes, like maybe 5 minutes to come in before we get started?
Hmm. Yeah, maybe let's wait a couple minutes. Hmm.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, I did hear from a number of people that they can't come tonight.
Okay. No worries.
We'll be sure. Oh, looks like we are already recording. I'm going to stop it until we actually start.
Yeah, thank you all for making the time. I'm grateful to have this community session. It's really a time for you all to ask questions. We'll do this community session a little different than last time. We'll use breakout rooms, which won't be recorded, so that you can have some spaciousness to answer some specific questions. And similar to our last session, we'll do like 2 to 3 people in a room, just so you have a chance to vocalize any thoughts that you might be having and also hear perspectives from other people in the room. But before we get started, I want to just check in and say hello to you all, and give you an opportunity to use your voice here in the beginning. So if you want to just pass it around and you can answer one of these questions, which I can put them in the chat. How is your heart? What is one thing you've learned? Or how are you taking good care of yourself as the winter solstice approaches? Okay, I'm going to put them in the chat here. You can pick one. I can answer. I'm Kelly. I'm in Jersey City, outside of New York City, which is Lenape land. The temperature is very cold. It's very windy. So I love winter for a lot of reasons, but I do not like being cold at all, not even a little bit. So I am taking good care of myself by investing in more substantial, like under things like long johns, wool socks, lots of layers, thick caps, because I want to have a very easeful December, but I don't want to be cold. And I will pass it over to Susan.
Thank you, Kelly. Susan Awali Land, and I was drawn to napping, how to take care of myself at this time. And I try to take a nap every day now, and it really makes a difference in my energy and how I'm feeling. So, and David.
Thank you. So I'm David. I'm just north of San Francisco in a little community called Larkspur, which is a sweet little village, kind of. My heart's doing actually better this week. Progress against my health challenge at the moment is measured in weeks and not days, unfortunately, which is a little bit frustrating. And the way I'm taking care of myself is spending more time with the yoga dog. Oh, she's wonderful. And I'll pass it to Mukti Devi.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Mukti Devi here in San Francisco. How is my heart feeling? I am in a good heart space, but physically it's racing because I had to make sure I got home in time from work, and I'm here, and I'm happy to be present. One thing I learned lately is just that there's always tomorrow. I can't cram everything in one day, pace myself, do what I can, and just be happy and satisfied with what I did accomplish today. Everything can wait tomorrow. And how am I taking care of myself as winter approaches? Just like with Kelly, gotta stay warm because I can't handle the cold. Just take care, stay warm, eat the right foods, and get a lot of rest.
Take a nap.
Yep. Eric.
Hey, folks. Let's see. Heart full. Great Thanksgiving with friends, family, a maid family at the ashram. Thanks, Ramananda and family. And then with friends. So yeah, and getting to spend time outside with the dogs all day. The weather's been gorgeous. Of course, it's going to turn. Tomorrow it's supposed to start raining and that won't be as much fun. But hey, I got a new rain poncho. So that's how I'm taking care of myself. But yeah, things are boop. I think that's it. Verena.
Hi, my name is Verena. I'm in Olone land, and yeah, my heart is feeling great today. I had a really busy 2 weeks with my clients, and yeah, and I taught a class in the morning, and then I met a friend today, and we hang out the whole afternoon. It was really nice to catch up. I haven't seen her for a while, and yeah, and I'm glad I could make it today. Diana.
Hi, everyone. All is good here. Heart is heart. Not sure if it's mine, but there it is. And yeah, I saw that one of all questions, but when you join in late, you don't see the previous chat. So I'm not sure what those.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Let me put the questions here. You don't have to answer all of them. You can just answer one or the ones you want. But the questions are: how's your heart feeling? What is one thing you've learned lately? Or how are you taking care of yourself as winter approaches?
Oh,
and then you just pass it to the next person.
All
So
right.
you can answer all of them or one.
How am I taking care of yourself as winter approaches? I'm spending money on heat, you guys. I'm just doing it. I'm like, I'm not going to suffer. I'm going to spend that extra cash and keep the house warm. And Kayla, how did you go yet?
What's that?
Did you already go or not?
I just got on, so I'm not even sure. So am I next?
You're next. Look in the chat. There's some questions.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, welcome.
sorry.
Just a chance to use your, no worries, you're not late, you're right on time. Just
Okay,
a chance to use your voice, just your name, if you want to share where you're located, and you could answer one or all of the questions in the chat.
Okay, so I'm Kay Aloha, and some of you all know me. And I live here in San Francisco. I've been at IYI since 2006, I think. And I just got out of training with Swami Ramananda on the yoga, Raja Yoga training course. So I staffed that. And so we just finished, and it was amazing, just amazing. And how am I feeling? My heart. I mean, it's great. I mean, I just came out of a training. And so when you come out of a training, I mean, of course, your heart is all full, especially if you're doing the Yoga Sutras, right? I think a lot of us has done that. So yeah, so I'm just, and I've been wanting to come to this for a while. but I've just been so busy, with life stuff, especially since the pandemic is over, clients is calling me like crazy. So that's been pretty busy. So yeah, what else am I supposed to say? Anything else?
That's all. You just have to pick a
Okay,
person
okay.
to pass it to. And Alan and Sarani haven't gone. Rama hasn't gone. Nancy hasn't gone. And Swami Ramananda hasn't gone. I'll pick for you. I'm going to pass it to Alan and Sarani.
Alan just stepped out for about a half an hour probably. And he had a health thing going on and he's all better. It's yay. He's feeling a lot better. And I think both of our hearts are very grateful for that. And he gave me a pair of socks last night, Kelly. You made me think of it. He calls them his moose socks, and they're really warm and fuzzy, and they have little moose on them. And I wore them last night in bed, and it just made all the difference. I was totally warm all night. So that was a great way, just a little thing. And I'm just so happy to be here. So I will pass it to Ramananda ji.
Thank you. I just want to say, Sarani, that my grandma used to say, if you keep your head and your feet warm, then you can't really be cold. So
Yeah.
I actually don't like to wear lots of clothes at home, but I am often in like shorts and a tank top and a hat with socks because my hat and my feet are warm. So it's
That's right.
anyway, go ahead, Ramananda. Sorry.
Well, how I'm taking care of myself is very similar. I pulled out the silk long underwear that I don't usually wear much, and it's doing the trick. I wore it all day yesterday.
I think it's Rama and Nancy.
I'm just trying to think if there's anything else I want to share.
Oh, okay. Oh, so sorry.
No, that's okay. Yeah, that's good enough. Yeah, my heart is fine. We had a great Thanksgiving. It was very full then, but now I'm involved enmeshed in other things. So let me go on to Rama, and I see Abaya is here now, Nancy. So she's also somebody, Rama, after you.
Hi everyone, my name is Rama. My heart is full of joy and gratitude for the opportunity to live and serve here at the Institute. And I typically take care of myself by getting out for a walk sometime early afternoon when it's still a little bit warmer and the sun's out. I'm still exploring. And I find that keeps my body temperature up going out for a walk because it's uphill, always on the way back. Thank you. Abaya, I think you might be next.
Okay, so I am taking care of myself by leaning into winter and enjoying what there is to enjoy, and taking care of myself, doing the same things you all mentioned, resting, staying warm. And I'm also drinking lots of hot tea, herbal tea. So that's my contribution.
Beautiful. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for sharing. This is a community feedback session. So I'm not here to teach, but more to facilitate you all being able to talk about the content that we've been covering. If this is your first time being in the space, I'm also here to answer any questions you might have if you've watched the recordings or around things that come up. So I just want to start out by asking, are there questions or thoughts that you wanted to share to the larger group? Because then we're going to move to some smaller groups, partners, 2 to 3 people, to talk about some of the content we've covered over the last couple of weeks. It's perfect because you'll have more time to talk with your partners. Um, Ramananda, do you need a few minutes to make the partner groups for people?
I think I can do it fairly quickly.
Okay.
What's you want two to a
Two
room,
to,
3 feet?
yes. 2 to a room is good, but yeah, that should be great. We
Okay.
may have an uneven number without me though.
Let's see, let me just look at the setup.
While Ramananda is doing that, I'll share the question that I want you to focus on in your personal groups. Part of the invitation that we made last time, we talked about the white supremacy culture document. Are you all familiar with the document that I'm talking about? I can also put it in the chat for people to have access to it. And one of the invitations that I made for you was not to do anything with the document, but to stay in reading it and maybe noticing some of the places where some of the things listed come up for you. You all remember or familiar or saw the recording around that? Perfect. So I don't need you to talk about like what you might have noticed in yourself, but I do want to put forward the question of what are you noticing about white supremacy culture in general? So it might be things you're noticing in the media, things you're noticing in the outward world around you. If you feel comfortable, it might be something that you're noticing about yourself. But I just want to make the space in a small group with someone you consider community time for you to talk about it. The recordings won't work in the room, so no one's going to have that content or be able to see or hear what you share except the other person that you're sharing with. And hopefully that gives a little bit more spaciousness around feeling like you can express yourself. We want you to like have privacy to share. So I'll put the question here after I put the document. Give me 1 second.
The rooms are ready whenever you're ready.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. I realize people might want the document to look at it. And, if you're going into the group, not having looked at the document or had a chance to look at the document, it's perfectly fine. Maybe in the group, you can ask your partner more about what they're noticing, and maybe you can take a look at it and discuss with them anything that comes up. Right now is the 50th minute for this hour. I want to give you all the way like 25 minutes. So that takes us to the like 05, 06-ish time. We're really till the 07 because it's going to take you a minute to get over there. Okay. Which might feel like a long time, but it probably won't be once you get over there and start talking about it. Okay. Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Ramananda, for opening those rooms.
And I'll join
Well,
one of the rooms.
What's the question? Do we know what the question
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm typing it right now into the chat. And you should still be able to see the chat in the groups.
Yeah. Okay, I'll join one of the groups.
Hey, Ramananda.
I just realized that I forgot to stop the recording.
Oh, recording again. Oh, besides we want to share, you could just message me and let me know that you'd like to share without the recording, and I can let Ramananda know that also.
Good. Well, I'll share something then. We had a good discussion about these items that we see in our culture, and we did talk about the ways that, at least I see these characteristics quite a lot in our culture in general. But I do see a few ways that they are within our yoga community as well, which to me is even more relevant. Of course, I'm interested in how they manifest in our culture as well, but I'm really interested in how they manifest within our culture. And what it brought to my mind is that I think even though we share within our yoga community, we share the same values like ahimsa and compassion, that it's still not easy to have difficult conversations about touchy subjects or to criticize each other without getting defensive and taking things personally. It's so ingrained in us to try to maintain an image that's shiny and to be right and not make mistakes. So I see how we would benefit from having some training that gives us some structure and just, I don't know, some skills at having those kind of difficult conversations. That's what really came up for me.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I'll share that. I think I said it when I gave you all the document last time, that a lot of organizations that I'm working with are different than you all. They're not like a living community. It's like a nonprofit or a business that works together, or like a large group of people, but very different. And also having this document handy when you have to like do the business of having difficult conversations has been helpful to them. Because the thing is, of course, there are facilitators who can come in and facilitate difficult conversations for you. I can do that. And also, it's not going to be an honest conversation. It's like when I was with you all the first time and we were talking about community, and it was a really large group of people from all over. And I left. And I left purposely so that you all could talk without someone outside of your community, me, observing, so that people could feel more comfortable to discuss it. The reality, which kind of was outlined in the white privilege document, is that especially for white people, talking about racism and the impacts of like global oppression and colonialism is something that not only is frowned upon and avoided, it's like eliminated from even basic education, because people don't want to have the tough conversation. And so I'm sharing that to say, as an organization, the work that we're doing together is just like a drop in the bucket. It's like we peeled back one layer. It would take years of us working together to like do everything, because there's so much to think about, so much to talk about, right? And you've opened it. And so collectively as a community, and we'll be talking about this in our next sessions together in January and February, how do you all do exactly this? Build a framework where you all know that you're valuable in this space. Nothing can decrease your value. Nothing will change how much we care for you. Nothing changes your belonging here. And also, we need to have a really tough conversation about whiteness in our community and what the white people here are doing to make this not a welcoming place to non-white people. Not from a malevolent space, no one's even saying that, but from the space of this is what we are socialized to. I was thinking about it yesterday because my children want to make a memoji on the phone, like a character of themselves that they could send in text messages. They have their own phone. And a shared phone, and they have this phone, and the default emoji is a white person, a white man. Like that's the default. That's the face that comes up. So you have to auto select. And that might seem like such a small thing. But even my 6-year-old said, why did they put a face in already? They don't even know what we look like. We could look like anything. Is this what they want us to look like? And their process around it was very much like, this is what's happening all the time to anyone who doesn't sit close to what dominant culture says is like perfect or good or right or best. And so it's not a malevolent thing. It's this notion that even when we talk about people, sometimes we'll say like, I don't see color. But also people usually only say that to people of color, not to other white people, because why would you need to? Or, you know, like we have government officials who will say like the real Americans. And it's like, we know who they're talking about when they say the real Americans. They're talking about white people who have a certain socioeconomic standard and who are born here. And it's like, there's so many more people who are citizens here, but this is who's centered as the real Americans. And so it's, I'm saying all of that to say, it's a deep dive around looking at little things, and most importantly, not avoiding the opportunity to have a difficult conversation and thinking about it like, you know, here on the call, there's 11 of you, 12 with Alan joining us back. And that's just like a part of your community when you think about your entire ecosystem, right? And so it's not possible to get everyone onto a Zoom at the same time to learn the same things. Not everyone's going to want to learn this at this time. Some people may feel they have capacity and then a life occurrence happens and they need to step back and take care of themselves. How can you all as a community make an environment where the conversation is always welcome, where everyone feels supported to have the conversation? More than getting it right, it's just being in it, continuing to be in it, because the reality is what we're learning about, what we're talking about, it wasn't created in the last generation or even 2 generations ago. We're talking about things that have been in place for 10 or 15 generations. And even through scientific study, it says there's 7 generations needed to heal a trauma. And racism is a trauma to all people. It shows up differently, but it is a trauma. Anytime you ask a human to be less human and then exact dehumanization on others, subconsciously or consciously, this is a trauma. So, you know, here in the US, if we're only talking about here in the US and enslavement, let's just say enslavement, and also genocide against indigenous people on this continent, we're only talking about 7 to 10 generations. And that healing is from the choice to make it. So like in our each personal lives, we might be the first person choosing to investigate this, to pull this apart. This means 7 generations from you, your energetic chosen biological families, then it might be healed. And, you know, this brings back to what I said in the very beginning. Gratefully, thankfully, we all have a practice of non-attachment, which says that we do right action because it's right, knowing that all is coming, not because we think we're going to get our own personal reward. It's about the care of everything on the planet. And so when it feels hard, right, that's part of the commitment that you all would have to make with one another, that no matter how hard this gets, we're not going to turn away from it, because it's actually very much in alignment with our true missions and values as a community. It's really truly in alignment with the practice that we put forward as a base for our community. And I'm saying that because, you know, like we've had some difficult conversations, but not nearly as difficult as it could get, especially because you all will have to interact with one another. And I want to invite that there's no rush. You know, even on that document, it talks about this sense of urgency. And often when I support communities in this type of work, they want to hurry up to show the world what they've learned and how they've changed and what they've done, which isn't sustainable, because they aren't taking the time to actually have real conversations, to even just change the way they interact with one another so that people feel safe to say like, hey, you know, I'm using you as an example, Ramananda, but hey, Ramananda, I saw you say, do, read, whatever, this thing. And for me, it makes me think of whiteness in these ways. And can I talk to you one-on-one? Not because I want to shame you or make you feel bad or loud over you, but because I really care about you and I believe in your capacity to be different, to change. And I want to talk about how we can change together. That's possible here. That's possible here. But it comes also from each individual involved deciding that this matters to them, that they want to heal the trauma that racism, for instance, has caused in them and in the world. And it's also the non-attachment of knowing that some people in your community aren't going to choose it. And so what does that mean for you? How do you still care for them, even though they aren't choosing it? Knowing that their non-choosing is not malevolent either. Their non-choosing is just like, it's not time for them to choose it. And there might never be a time for them to choose it, but how could you keep inviting them to choose it? Like, that's where I am around talking to people about climate change. I see people's eyes like glaze over when I say, like, in 30 years, we might not be able to live on the planet if we don't do something today. And people's eyes like glaze over. And I just like let it float. It happened to me earlier today. I just like let it float. And the next time I'm just bring it up again. Because I just want to like gently, carefully keep inviting them. And that's the same thing y'all can do. It's just like gently, carefully keep inviting your community back to these conversations, whether it's you all deciding that we're going to read a text, not even a book, a text together for this month. And we're going to put questions around the ashram. We're going to send questions via email. We're going to present these questions at the ends of our offerings to people. We're just going to stay in it and build this safe, the word that comes to my mind is nest, where people know that like this is difficult to talk about in the general world. It doesn't have to be difficult to talk about here. It doesn't mean it won't be uncomfortable, but we have tools for that. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, so that's all that's very helpful. And I think, at least I'll just speak from my own point of view, of course, but I think the difficult part of that equation that you're articulating now is not so much, ooh, difficult conversation, ooh, I mean, you know, we're pretty good at that, right? And knowing how to handle it and be soft and gentle and warm. I mean that in a very positive way. The thing that I think is the challenge, not just for us, again, just stick with me, is the urgency question. I don't feel the need to announce it, you know, and let people know what progress we're made, but I do feel the need and the urgency to self-reflect and say, and give a realistic assessment. Hey, what are we doing? Are we making progress here? And whatever the question is at hand. So I guess my challenge is to pose out loud to everybody, and you in particular, Kelly, of course, how do we keep that urgency going?
Right.
Without
Well,
drowning in it and without, you know,
right. Right. I think that, you know, like as an organization, I'm quite sure that you have like missions and values, right, that have been established maybe a long time ago. Maybe they get revisited. I don't know how that actually works for y'all, but y'all know. And so part of how you keep it at the top, so I don't want to use urgent because urgent makes people rush and they want like something to show. But how we keep people engaged, how we keep it sustainable, like in a sustainable engagement, is for the people in leadership to hold it as the most important thing. And so that puts a lot of responsibility on leadership, but it's in an organization, even though we might want to think of creating organizations that are non-hierarchical, most of the time there is a hierarchy of who's making choices, who allocates funding, who decides on programming, who does the logistics of that programming. And unfortunately, for a lot of other organizations, I usually am training the people who don't make those choices. And so there's this pushback of like the people who've taken the training and the people who can control the people who took the training. And so they return to whatever organization, group, place of work, ready to make change. And the people essentially at the top are like, oh, wait a minute, because they didn't engage the work. And so they don't hold it as important.
Yeah.
I think what is beneficial, at least here in San Francisco, is, and I don't know the hierarchy, right? And also Ramananda brought me in, and I assume it's because they have the authority to do so. And so it's like, how can you all as a community hold the people who make these choices accountable, and not in a way of like, you're not keeping us engaged, but in a way of like, hey, Ramananda, I'm using you as an example that you're on the call. Ramananda, we haven't really done anything around this in a while. And I read something really great because, right, part of it is each of you still staying engaged individually. I read this really great thing, and I really think our community should read it and see it. Would you like me to help you organize how that happens? Versus thinking about holding people accountable as like, only these people can move this work forward. Each of you is a cultural innovator, shaper, voice of change, valuable person in this community. So each of you has the responsibility to like keep it at the top for yourself individually and for others. And so like, I'll just share a personal practice that I have. I believe that joy is more than just like feeling happy. I hold joy as a state of being where I feel sure, where I feel safe, where I know that my needs are met and I'm valued, and like the people around me are going to advocate for me, care for me, and also hold me accountable. That's part of joy for me. It takes a long time to create joyful spaces because we live in a world that kind of makes joy like a thing where there's no problems and you're in a field skipping with sunflowers and a dress on, and that's not accessible 99% of the time. I'm sharing that to say, I like to watch the news because I like to know what's happening, potentially because it impacts the work I do. I manage mutual aid, meaning I give money to people who don't have money for food or housing or medicine or whatever. And so I need to know what is happening, particularly here in the United States, because this impacts people's requests for money and our ability to fundraise. I try to find a balance though, between taking in what's happening on the news. I really like educational documentaries, but also things that are inspiring for me. And so for a little while, it might be helpful to each of you to say, I'm gonna check out this book on the resource list that Kelly provided, or this documentary I found, or this article I saw, and I'm gonna sandwich it between things that connect me to the community. And I'm gonna commit to sharing what I learn here with one other person in our community. I'm just giving that as an example because that's kind of the space that I roll through. I watch a lot of media, especially during the pandemic time. This is probably the most I've watched media, but also I'm reading more than I've read in a long time because I'm home. And so I like to collage and I like to crochet. I will often crochet while I watch a documentary, and I'll send a picture of what I made and the article to somebody that I think needs to read it. Just because it's like, I'm not just bombarding you with things about climate change, for instance. I'm also showing you this pretty macrame thing I made. Look, mom, look at the thing I made, and also read about why you got to stop using plastics. And like, you can be doing that too. And that might not seem like a lot, but we are in an interesting period where there's lots of information available. And also it's being very curated for us. And so people around you who trust you, and I've said this before, people who trust you, who value your voice, who love you, they're much more likely to listen to you about this than anyone else. And so can you just continually like plant seeds? Because this is also part of that work. So it's like planting seeds in yourself by taking in new things and then sowing those seeds outwardly. This keeps you in the movement. And if you all, like as a group, you know, in our last session, we're really going to be talking about like, this is what the ashram is going to be doing henceforth. Meaning we're going to come up with a lot of ideas, and y'all are going to take those ideas and decide through your own decision-making processes how to move those things forward, right? I trust y'all to do that. But I'm going to facilitate you through thinking about what those steps are. And each of you has the opportunity, if you choose, to not only make like collective agreements, but like individual agreements that I'm going to keep talking about this. Maybe in other groups I've worked with, people find partners or small groups where they have shared identity, maybe close location to one another. meeting schedules where they can pull apart books together, where they can talk about documentaries they've watched together. And you all have that opportunity too. And I hope that answers your question, David, but it's really the space of like, I say it to myself all the time, and I say it to y'all. We will be doing this work of undoing this trauma for the rest of our lives. And passing that legacy to whatever humans are left. We will be doing, then they'll be doing it also. Because at the same time that we're trying to undo it, they're grasping to it and like pushing it forward as like, why would you walk away from this thing? And we know why we all want to walk away. It doesn't feel good. That's why a lot of y'all might have left living just in the world to be here at the ashram, right? To have a different experience. I mean, even Alan shared last time, welcome back, Alan, how different the corporate culture is from the culture at the ashram. And most people are not experiencing the culture of the ashram. And even, you know, to Ramananda's point, you all probably can see places where this shows up even here. And so it's like, if you all have an intentional community, think of the layers upon layers of work that other people, even in your family, that you see would have to do to be able to pull this information in and not be defensive or shut down or feel like this is an attempt to make them feel bad about themselves. Like, it's going to be a lot of work, but you have friends doing it with you. So that makes it like, that's what I have to tell myself too, of like, it's good for me to be in the space with you all doing this work, because then it like reminds me like, okay, so I'm not the only one. There's, you know, however many people. I could go to the ashram and talk about this if I need to while I'm in San Francisco, because they're already in this work and doing it. And there's so many other spaces where it's not. And what I said to you all last time also, I still feel you all are one of the oldest yoga institutions in the United States. And although the yoga industrial complex that exists right now doesn't really honor yoga in the way that I experience it when I'm in you all's spaces, you all are still looked to as a leader. And so you have an opportunity to use that power to push forward something that other places like these large magazines, accrediting agencies, clothing companies, they are not willing or prepared to do. And so even if it takes you all 10 years to have something tangible for the outside world to learn from, you got to start now. Because it's also going to be modeling the entire time of what can happen, the way that an organization can be open, invite people in, do their own work, and not for show, but for longevity, for actual equity, not performed equity. And I know that these other organizations aren't doing the work because I've sat with them just like I'm sitting with y'all. And it was a very different experience. A lot of arguing with me. You know what I'm saying? And I appreciate, even though I'm sure there are things that I'm saying that don't resonate, I just appreciate the openness and the willingness, because I've literally had people say like, we're not going to talk about that. We refuse to talk about that. And you all haven't done that, which gives me a lot of hope.
So it's good. The only part of the equation that I have difficulty with is the crocheting, but I'll use my daughter's crocheting.
Right.
She's
I
good
mean,
at
you could pick anything. I send some people flowers. I send some people like cat names. It's just, I like to, my family already knows I'm going to be the rabble rouser at everything. And so I just like to soften the blow a little bit around like, we're not doing Thanksgiving this year because it's about genocide. We're just going to go to the woods. But I love y'all and I'll send you pictures of the woods. It's like, I try to like, I'm talking about my mom. She was kind of like, no Thanksgiving. I was like, yeah, not this year. It doesn't resonate with our family anymore. But I'll send you pictures of the fun we have. And it opened up a great conversation about the genocide that surrounds that particular holiday. She might not have been open to the conversation if I had entered it in a different way. So just giving y'all examples of how to like,
great, thanks.
you know, the people in your life. Yeah, thank you. Alan and Serena.
Did you want to say something? Okay. In our little breakout room, the idea that it's not so much our culture or that we're so different from other cultures, except that more it's capitalism that is behind all of this. And if we're living in a capitalistic society, these are going to, a hierarchical society, these are going to be things that we're going to be up against. And how do you, and then does that mean that it's not racism? Does it mean that it's capitalism? Or how do you, I don't know how to articulate it any better than that, but that came up.
It's a great question. It's the one that I wrestle with all the time. I think I shared with you all that my partner also does race and equity education. And at least twice a week, we have a conversation of like, is it white supremacy or is it capitalism? Like, which one came first? Is capitalism what fuels white supremacy or vice versa? I don't have an answer. All I know is they both got to get gone. And the only way they're going to get gone is for us to even name that it has to get gone. And I mean, I think y'all are in a more expensive place around it getting gone because of the life you're choosing in terms of being involved in an ashram and like an intentional community, even if you don't live there. Most of the time when I bring up capitalism, that's where the arguing starts. Because I mean, as Americans, we really are socialized that it is the way to exist. And even people who might be very expansive around people having their basic needs met. When we say like capitalism has to go, I mean, I had the conversation with one of my parents a couple of years ago, and he said to me like, so you're telling me I wasted my whole life? And I mean, how do you say that to people? But yeah, yeah, you did. You spent your whole life leaning into something that is killing you. And it's a hard conversation to have because often when you say to people we have to get rid of capitalism, they're like, well, then what are we supposed to do? And it's like, well, I don't have that answer, but we could try to figure it out together. And like, that's the work that your community can do too, right? Like in some ways, I've experienced that you all lean out of capitalism in a heavy way. I'm talking about integral yoga as a whole. And also you exist within a capitalist system. So rent's got to be paid, food has to be purchased, supplies have to be acquired, teachers need to be, well, I learned recently that you all teach in karma. So it's not like a transaction, which is different than most every yoga place. But it's also like, how can you do that in a way that is sustainable, right? In a capitalist system, it's very difficult and complex and also not impossible. But if you don't have conversations about it, if you treat money as the taboo that capitalism teaches us to treat it as, you're never going to talk about how to get rid of it inside of your community. And not like get rid of it by 2023, but get rid of it in 7 generations or 5. So I don't have an answer to your question, but I am thinking about it all the time. Love to talk about it anytime. So email me, make an appointment with me of how do we differentiate between it. But you know, often when I'm witnessing what's happening in the world, unfortunately, I can always trace it back to capitalism, which is so heartbreaking that money is now the most important thing. And, you know, on that sheet that we have that we're looking at, they don't talk about capitalism specifically, but, you know, the antidote that I'm finding for capitalism is centering community as the most important resource and doing a lot of heavy lifting around how to be an authentic community with people so that even though money is needed for us to exist, there is a collective desire for everyone to have what they need and working together to make sure that that's always happening, which feels like could be something for you all to, you know, lean heavy into for yourselves also, even extending outside of who might be in membership to your ashram, to your community, right? How can you make sure that everyone around the ashram has what they need? What would that look like for all your energy to be invested in that too?
Deanna had her hand up earlier. Did you still want to comment, Deanna?
You don't want to get me started.
No, go ahead.
Well, I grew up in socialism, where the Communist Party had all the power, and the abuse of power was way on a grander scale than what's here in United States. And the democratic government that you have here So when I read that document, it actually reminded me a lot of, not because I didn't grow up with what you grew up with, but I grew up with that as a abuse of power, and being the one who was being without any power. I saw that in that document more than the whole race, I have to admit. And that just got me thinking, like, even in monarchy and dictatorship of any kind, you know, it's really, when I see that document, to me, it talks about the way a good leadership could be, regardless if the leadership is within a community of mixed races or one race, or, you know, so that's what I saw in that a lot, like this. Like, even I was actually thinking about Ramananda, like, him being in power of the ashram, you know, I wonder if this, I mean, who can help it? Because it really talks about the leadership and those in power and those that are not in power, and how those in power should be more considerate and open to include and inclusive to those that, and there's always going to be people who are in power. I don't know if getting rid of the capitalism would really solve the problem. That's a long answer to that. So that's from me.
No, I appreciate you sharing. It makes me think about the documentary that I shared with you all before, Exterminate All the Brutes, because it talks about, the oppression of Europeans by other Europeans in the name of colonialism as well. And yeah, I we'll talk about it in our next time, but part of what feels really heavy about the work that we're all agreeing to do, you all and me, is that we've lived underneath these systems, whether it's communism, whether it is democracy. I'm saying it in quotes. We don't actually live in that. We live in a democratic republic, not actual democracy. But whether it's that, whether it is some other type of government, that we sometimes, not sometimes, it is hard for us to imagine what it would mean to exist without it. And yet humans did exist without it at a certain point, even money. And so the conversation I often have with my 6 and 8-year-old is that I have no idea what type of world they will be adults in. And anything that they could visualize for how they would want to live freely is possible. And so we spend a lot of time talking very expansively about, like I said to my partner on Wednesday of last week, what would you do if you could just wake up and not have to worry about like the cost of anything? And I'm sure people would have different answers that are around like obtaining things. But the reality is, like, most of us would have the space to rest, to read, to make, just for the sake of it, to eat well, to move our bodies. And so I'm sharing that to say, yeah, it's a long, convoluted answer to your point, Diana, of like what to do. And the possibility, or like the solution that we seek for this, doesn't yet exist. If it existed, we would not be navigating this. And so I'm never looking, when I'm thinking about like a possible future, at what we've already done, because what we've already done is this over and over and over and over again for 1,000 years. I am always trying to think about, and I'm going to give you all some tools around this during our next time when we talk about change. I'm always visioning much further than what seems possible or logical. Not from the space of I think I'll ever experience that, but from the space of, if we never envision what is possible further and further, then we're never even exploring how to get to those further places. And I don't want us to be stuck here forever, circling around, do we have a monarch or do we have a president? Of like, what if we just have people living in right relationship with the land and with each other? We don't need to police people around stealing food if everyone has it. It's just, that's the reality of it. We wouldn't have to. And I'm not saying that all the problems of our society would just disappear, and also a lot would. But often the solution that like centers people isn't seen as viable because it's not going to make the people with the most power money. Right. So I'm just sharing that. And those are my own personal thoughts. But next time we are going to talk about like, how can you vision things for yourself, your community, the city you live in, the state, the country, the places that you consider home, whether that's here in the US or abroad. How can you imagine new possibilities? Not because we're going to get there right now, but because maybe someone's going to get there one day because you envisioned it. And what I hold is like my partner always says to our children, everything you see that exists was once in someone else's imagination. And there were 100 people telling them that thing was not possible. And it's just a good like practice for us as adults to know that the story, even the story of what we think is possible, is held by white supremacy and capitalism. And that's hard to run up against because there is real realities of like, you got to pay to eat, you got to pay to live, you got to pay to move around, you got to pay for care. And also like, by the time we're done with this, I'm going to invite y'all a million times to imagine that that's no longer the case. That people have food and shelter and care just because they exist, not because they work hard or got a good insurance plan or because the government made a good Medicare plan. Like, no, we just have it because we've decided to live in the way that we're actually supposed to live versus the way capitalism and whiteness have encouraged us to live. And that might not happen for 15 generations.
That's a great vision to hold on to, though.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to be mindful of y'all's time and mine. I've been up since 5:30 Eastern Standard Time. And so it's been a long day and another one tomorrow. But I want to make space in case there's any last thoughts and then say goodnight and make space for you to do your closing too.
I know one thing I have in my mind, Kelly, is that I know you won't be with us in December, but we wanted to keep some momentum going, and we're planning to meet on our own mid-December, another hour-and-a-half session similar to this. So I'd welcome any suggestion you have for how we might make use of that time. If you have another article or any resources you suggest, we might even suggest that, I know one thought that came to my mind is different people read different things and then report to each other.
Yeah. Well, what I can offer you is a snippet of the resource list with some short things that are like 10 or 30 minutes of engagement time. And maybe you all can decide amongst yourselves which one you would want to look at. There's a video from Michelle Cassandra Johnson. Some of you all might be familiar with her. She has a few books now, but one that's a really good resource is, it just went out of my mind.
Yeah.
The name of it just like, whew, I've been up a long time. I can send you, but she has a TED Talk that's 10 minutes long called No Neutral. And there's a couple of other articles, but also her book might be a great tool for y'all to look into. It's just at 100 pages, I think.
Yeah,
I cannot believe I forgot the name of this book.
Skill in Action.
Skill in Action, yes. Skill in Action. It's a great book too, so that might be a good resource. But I can work on a list and send it to you in the morning.
Great.
Yeah. But also, you know, you all coming together and maybe pairing off in small groups just to share where you are, what you've been thinking about is a great starting point. And there might be more openness and expansion if I'm not in this space, just because you all know each other. Even if not everyone knows everyone, you all know each other. And I'm like outside eyes in a private conversation.
I want you to not be an outsider anymore.
No. I mean it from the space of like, I feel in community with all of you, and also you all already have relationships with one another. And I
Yeah.
find that when people, that's why I often send people to breakout rooms
Yeah.
so that you can voice the things that you might be thinking without feeling pressure or
Yeah.
like you're going to create a problem in the room. Yeah.
I just want you to feel like part of our family, Kelly.
Of course I do. Of course I
Good.
do. Of course I
Good.
do. Yeah, yeah. Next time I'm out there, I'm coming to see you.
Anybody else have a comment or question or anything? Okay, let's do a closing chant. We can chant Asatoma chant and Loka Samasta, right? Affirming our intention for our spiritual growth and sending peaceful energy outward. Asatoma Sadgamaya Tamasoma Jyotir Gamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. May the entire universe be filled with peace and joy, love and light. May the light of truth dispel all ignorance. Victory to that light. Jai Sri Satguru Maharaj Ki Jai. Okay, thank you, Kelly.
Thank you. I'll see y'all next year.
Okay.